Okay. Um, Thank you, everyone, for inviting us to speak. The name of our talk is Earn Our Trust, the Perspectives of Patients and Caregivers. And James, if you can go to the next slide. I'm going to start by introducing myself, and then my co-speakers will introduce themselves, and then we'll start telling you what we'd like to share. So my name is Kathy Hansen. I am Director of Patient Engagement and Patient Family-Centered Care at the University of Miami Health System. Patricia?
I'm Patricia Evans. I'm in South Carolina, and I'm a member of the Patient and Family Caregivers Advisory Council that make up Home Run.
Hey, Marty.
Hi, I'm Marty Carney. I live in the Boston area. I am a 35-year breast cancer survivor, and I've been doing this work since then. And I am on the Home Run team as well as the advising in the Brigham and Women's Hospital. James?
Hi, everyone. I'm James Harrison. I'm an Associate Professor of Medicine at the Division of Hospital Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. I'm also a PCORI ambassador.
Okay. And next slide, and Patricia.
So this afternoon, we hope that by the end of our presentation, you will be able to recognize the 4 key areas for prioritization to earn family and patient trust that we have identified based on our experiences as patients and caregivers. We also plan to describe some real-world examples and strategies to build trust, adding some do's and some don'ts, and then also to explain the mission and activities of the Hospital Medicine Reengineering Network, also known as Home Run. This parent group is what brought us together in 2018. Next slide, please. According to a report by the United States Department of Health and Human Services in 2019, only 12% of Americans have proficient health literacy skills. Thus, as the Home Run Patient and Family Advisory Council, we started from the premise that if we do not understand, how can we trust? Let's face it, you can't make competent, informed decisions if you don't understand what you're being told. But before we get into the 4 key areas that we believe need to be in place to earn patient and family trust, my colleagues James will introduce what Home Run is, and then my colleague Marty will talk about the role of the hospitalist. James?
Thanks, Patricia. So Home Run is an acronym that stands for the Hospital Medicine Reengineering Network. It is a network of hospitalists, researchers, patients, families, and other hospital medicine groups from across the country who are all working together to discover and implement quality of care improvements to improve the patient experience for patients who've been hospitalized.
I know Marty just stepped away, so I'm going to get started with, oh, there you
No,
are.
I'm here.
Okay.
Somebody turn the lawnmower on.
All right. So this is you.
So hospitalist. This is the role under General Medical Services and their team. It usually begins from an ED admission, an unplanned admission. They are the hospital person, or they are your medical person that is in charge of your care. Your PCP will be, or your patient, excuse me, your primary care physician will be kept in contact and informed, but it'll be the hospitalist that you will work with. In doing that, they will take care of your entire care team. They coordinate the care with the support of clinical staff, and they are also the communicators to everyone within the care team. They don't know you, and you don't know them. This is normally a one-time relationship. It's very important that they know you, and you know them, and they are aware of your concerns. These conversations are vital to you and to the entire clinical team. Rounding is one of the ways that hospitalists communicate. It's bilateral, and they share and they answer questions and they explain the care process to you. This being said, these conversations of trust and patient family staff are the way we get to the very same page. It's important that the patient and family have a comfort level to ask any question at any time to anyone of the team to ensure their understanding of their current situation. I'm going to explain briefly one story that we had of a patient that was in the hospital. She had multiple situations. She was being taken care of by a hospitalist and their team, but she also had her son there translating because she didn't speak a word of English. He was doing all the translating. They had gotten to the point of decision making. The translation was going back and forth. And at the end of the conversation, the hospitalist spoke directly to her in Spanish, asking her if she understood and asking her if she had any questions. I can tell you that I happened to be at the scene. It was palpable when she did that question to him and she returned in Spanish. She returned to him and he replied. That was the major connection that made that patient experience include trust and confidence in their care team. I want to tell you too that be mindful in your hospital situation that sometimes they rotate services. So this relationship may need to be reestablished, and it is important again that everybody is on the same page so that the patient totally understands the next steps. Thank you. We're on to the next slide.
Okay, thank you so much, Marty. So this is a picture of the group that James has put together. And as Patricia mentioned, we've been together since 2018. We represent 9 different states. We are diverse in terms of being a patient, being a caregiver. We are different ages and genders and ethnicities, and we have different family circumstances, but we all come together around the focus of making sure that patients and family members can participate in their healthcare in the best and most meaningful way. And James, in the next slide, we have a couple of members that weren't able to be here to participate. So James had included these slides. In the bottom left is Jim Banta, and in the top right is Jacqueline Alakani. I don't want to mispronounce her name. And in the top right, you will see that we not only work together, but we show up at conferences color coordinated. And we've been working together for a long time now, and we are really committed to this, and we have a great group. So go on to the next slide, James.
So how did the Home Run Patient and Family Advisory Council kind of write this article? Well, the Journal of Hospital Medicine, which is the main journal that hospitalists and hospital administrators access and read, had a call for articles about trust. So the Home Run PFAC decided to submit an article from their perspectives, the patient perspectives. This is a clinical journal. It was very novel for having patients to write a perspective piece to this journal. And during this process, they were able to publish this article, which is available to all. We'll make sure everyone gets the link. But this kind of article has taken kind of on a life of its own. I was recently at a conference in May with the Society of General Internal Medicine, and this was presented by a keynote speaker as an article, a must-read article for all hospital clinicians to read, and a call for action. And again, we get back to, if patients do not understand it, if their families do not understand it, how can we trust? And it was in this article that the Home Run PFAC came up with 4 key areas about earning trust. One was to understand and adopt the patient perspective. The second is to address the structural barriers to trust. There's also the importance of communicating effectively and transparently. And then also making sure that you can build and operationalize trust within the hospital system. And now we're going to go through each of these and briefly talk about some examples and real-world examples of how this can be achieved in hospital systems.
This
Marty,
is,
it's you.
I'm going to, this is Marty. I'm going to talk about how you adopt and understand the patient and caregiver perspective within your system. First of all, I want to make sure I have my little things that I think are very important. You have to be aware of the patient and family-centered care principles of dignity and respect, information sharing. Also, what now? I can't believe I lost those. Information sharing, help me out, Kath.
Dignity and respect, information sharing, participation, and collaboration.
Collaboration. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to lose that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is we all need to wear bifocal lenses. We as patients and families and caregivers need to see it the way you see it, but you also need to wear bifocal lenses and to see it the way we see it. It makes a big difference. We all need hearing aids because we have to listen to one another and what they have to say. We have to be mindful of the health literacy at the 5th grade plain language, and also as we may or may not speak your language, and you may or may not know our culture or any idea of who we are or what we know about our current situation. It's a frightening situation. We're at the end of our wits. So please be sure to open your eyes, your ears, and apply the 4 principles. I want to give you a quick setup from one of our advisors who's on our home run team. Beverly is an 80-year-old African-American, and she has been in many situations where she's put into a box that is not who she is. In her idea, you have to earn her trust. You have to communicate to her with dignity and respect, with information sharing, with transparency, and with full communication. That's how you will earn her trust. And if you use that as an example, I think it would be helpful going forward to keep those in mind. Next slide.
The next key point is addressing the structural barriers to trust. Recognizing that the hospital's care model is a form of temporary managed care from a patient's perspective, and that for the most part, patients are not expecting this kind of model. It can often be confusing and seen as impersonal. Some healthcare systems have done a great job of seeing this model through the patient's lens. For example, Chester County Hospital in Pennsylvania provides each patient with a brochure that has a picture of all of the members of the hospitalist team that are assigned to that floor. Additionally, they have arranged the scheduling so that the hospitalist physician and the nurse practitioner or physician assistant are teamed for each patient. Their schedules are planned to overlap so that for most patients, they are being seen by the same team of 2 throughout their entire hospital experience. Or in Miami, they use a patient specialist role. The patient specialist is assigned to each floor to ensure patients' understanding of what's being told to them. And in Boston, they use a teach-back model, where the provider asks the patient or caregiver to tell them what they heard, thus ensuring increased understanding. And on to the next principle, Kathy.
Okay, so the third principle that we have is how to communicate effectively and transparently. And these principles all came out of discussions of all of the members of the home run PFAC, and then informed and led by James, who works with the home run physicians who represent, I think last I heard, James, it was 500 different hospitalists that participate in this. So it was very much a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach to coming up with these principles. So first principle, we require better communication and compassion from our hospital care team. And this is really important. And another one of our members of Home Run shared a story with us recently. She has a very challenging health condition. She is in and out of hospitals. She has a port as a result. And this time her hospitalization occurred at a hospital that was much smaller and different hospital than what she usually goes to. None of the providers wanted to access her report when treating her. They wanted to use her insert or pull blood from veins, and that wasn't working. And she tried to communicate that, and it didn't come through very well. They kept trying to do this. Finally, after she'd been in the hospital a few days, they told her that they just didn't have the expertise in terms of how to use her report. So you can imagine what that did to her comfort level and her feeling of trust. We also want to point out that we recognize that we as patients and caregivers require personalized explanation and language that we understand based on who we are. I learned this as I stepped out of my role. I'm not a clinician, but I was embedded on the COVID unit during the worst of the pandemic here in Miami. And we often got, not often, but occasionally got calls from family members saying, I don't want to have that nurse or doctor treat my loved one again. And when we really looked into what the problem was, because the providers were exceptional and we had seen what they were doing, it was because we had people who were travelers and didn't necessarily understand the culture and didn't really and couldn't honestly take time to really communicate with that patient and understand. And in the largely Cuban population that we have here in Miami, it is very common that you speak to the patriarch or the family as opposed to the patient directly about their healthcare conditions. So that really impacted their trust. Third point on this slide is acknowledge that depending on our individual health literacy, clinicians might need to alter how they present information. And as we all know, all of us involved in health literacy, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter what your degrees are. If you've not been in that situation before, you are in the same place as everyone else, and you need to make sure that you understand what's being said and not do like what a lot of us do and nod and say, yes, I understand, and then go home and don't understand at all. And then finally, communication that includes listening and that is sensitive to our verbal and nonverbal cues. Teach back is so important here, making sure that patients really understand what we're communicating to them and families as well. And we really believe that helps promote trust. So next slide.
Build and operationalize trust in the system. Hospitals really need to commit to this goal in their mission. All participants within the system need to have awareness in communications with patients, families, and caregivers. The messaging needs to be consistent from every angle to establish trust. Mixed messaging does not make patients or families feel comfortable. And it all begins at the very beginning of the registration. When you register, that is the opportunity for them to get accurate information for your electronic health record and for all continual communication. So you need to make sure that they understand, the registrars understand and detail the information and double check for understanding. I've had multiple scenarios where the wrong information is on the EHR record and it does not help the program going forward. Also, an example of designing all of your patient-facing communications to use the same phrasing. Signage throughout the hospital, for example, phlebotomy versus lab. It all needs to be consistent. Visitor policy, as a result of COVID, not having visitors be part of the care team, which they are part of the care team. We had a major example in one of our emergency departments where actually it took a long time for us to get the staff to include a caregiver. But once the caregiver was no longer there during COVID, they missed that interaction because they were another conduit to explaining the patients and entire situation that they may not have been in a position or capable of doing it. So always keep in mind that your patients and families are your PR team. They answer the surveys, they go out and speak to the community. People come to them and ask you how that went. That is a major, major important. And you also need to know that every touch point of the care process from scheduling on down is also recommended by the patients and families that you serve. The onus is on your system, and that segments need to be messaged with, again, mindfulness and their understanding of who their audience is and what their audience needs. Because it's not how well it's messaged or said, but it's how well it is understood by everyone within the system, both the patients and families and caregivers, but also the staff, because we need to have that clear line of communication. Without that, we don't have trust.
And then really this is for all of us, and on behalf of all of us, the points that we make is that if we do not understand it, how can we trust? And that's the message that the paper presented and the message that we hope our talk presented. And then finally, with our last slide, if anyone has any questions, we are happy to answer those questions for you. We've got about 4 minutes, and within that time frame, happy to answer. Okay. I don't see any questions coming, unless anyone sees any that I'm not seeing, but if not, thank you on behalf of all of us and Home Run, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.